So in the last video, I hope I sort of convinced you of this cycle that carbon dioxide in our atmosphere can be involved with. And in the case here, this little pink carbon dioxide molecule may have made it into part of a tree, sunk to the bottom of the ocean, put back in the earth in a subduction zone, something like that. But the point is that it was once in the atmosphere and now it's way down in the earth. And of course, what can happen at that point is it can come back out of the earth in a couple of ways here. A volcano can blow it out. Or we can burn a fossil fuel. Or it can also come out when decay of some live organism, maybe like this tree or something like that. So a volcano can blow it back out. We can burn it back out in terms of fossil fuels, burning oil, natural gas, that kind of thing. Or the decay of a natural organism can also put it back into the atmosphere. But I hope either way here, you see the point here is that rain sort of regulates CO2. And for the longest time, the Earth was very happy with this regulation here, and it reached an equilibrium. So through whatever mechanism, the carbon dioxide was rained down into oceans, into subduction zones and trees and that kind of thing. And so the Earth was very happy with about that 280 parts per million of carbon dioxide concentration. So that sort of persisted for a very long time. Okay, so what does this have to do with Venus? Well, when we go to Venus then, I'll just tell you one simple thing about Venus here in particular. If you go to Venus then and start worrying about carbon dioxide there. Venus basically, there's no rain. Okay, there's no rain on Venus at all. And so you miss out that washing effect. The water washing all the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And Venus, as far as we know, is like one big strong plate. We're not aware of any plate tectonics on Venus, so also maybe there's no subduction zones. And there are volcanoes, and so yes, I agree with you that volcanoes can occur near subduction zones, but in the case of Venus, we think it's more like the Hawaiian Island where the volcanoes are just sort of near weak spots in Venus's crust. And the reason why I call them weak spots, because it's just areas where the rock, for whatever reason, isn't that strong, and so the lava is able to break through and cause a volcano. And that happens on the Earth, and that's exactly how, say, the Hawaiian Islands formed here. Hawaiian Islands are formed just that way, so it is not something we know can happen. But in either case, Venus, as far as we know as the planet goes, is just one big solid shell like this. The crust is a solid shell with no plate tectonics, and there can be a volcano like this, but only up at a weak spot. So it's not going to be, say, where, again, two plates are colliding together. And so the volcanoes can just sort of sit here then and just spew out CO2. And actually, mostly what's in volcanic eruptions is water as well. But Venus is, on Earth anyway, but Venus is known to be very dry. And so probably the volcanic eruptions are just spewing CO2 into Venus' atmosphere continually like that. And with no rain to recycle it, if you are that little CO2 molecule in Venus's atmosphere, we'll just put a bunch of question marks next to you because you don't have any place to go. There's not going to be any rain that's going to wash you down into the rocks. There's no water that's going to dissolve you, and there's really no trees or vegetation that are going to need you either. And so, of course, what happens is the CO2 molecules just start building up, and without that carbon cycle that's initiated by rain, there's just nowhere to go. And so we don't think at the moment, like because the Earth has rain and has that carbon cycle, that there still is some natural sort of global regulation of carbon dioxide. So we don't think we're necessarily headed to be a Venus, but of course, as we keep pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, maybe the natural carbon cycle can't keep up with that cycling process, and who knows, the carbon dioxide level will just continue to rise. So I do have some professional graphs I'd like to show you here on the carbon cycle. And here they are. And so this is sort of a graphic of what I drew earlier here. Maybe I'll just go through some of the important points with you here. As you can see, here is the greenhouse gases that we're talking about right here. These are those greenhouse gases we're talking about here. Water, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, that sort of thing coming out on an ongoing basis. And of course, water and carbon dioxide are the biggies in terms of greenhouse emissions. Okay, so as you can see here, exactly sort of as I outlined here, the water can fall as rain. Water can fall as rain. I'm having trouble with my highlight here. Water can fall as rain and dissolving the CO2. They can go down to the ocean. They become part of sedimentary rocks. Plants convert the CO2. And of course, if you have a good old subduction zone here, then the CO2 can get liberated back into the atmosphere through a volcano, or remember, burning fossil fuels or decaying of a live organism. But in either case, the CO2 gets cycled. So this is sort of the picture on Earth here. You wouldn't think of it. A peaceful forest, a beautiful ocean, a violent volcano, all part of the carbon cycle. And so as we see here, the word is the Earth, the plate tectonics recycles gases and maintains the moderate atmosphere. So that's the way the Earth works. And again, we've used this term before when we were talking about the Earth, but we have this active geology, and that's part of what makes the Earth what it is, okay? So, of course, here's a picture on Venus here, and you can tell by this first heading here, no plate tectonics, more intense sunlight, and the thick atmosphere, okay? So you have the usual start here, the water, carbon dioxide, all those things, outgassed from volcanoes. Water doesn't fall as rain, so there's no ocean, so the CO2 remains in the atmosphere, just intensifying that greenhouse effect. There's some other things about what ultraviolet light might do, but the point is that if you just sort of look at this part of the cycle on Venus here, you just don't see all those mechanisms. You don't see any trees, you don't see any ocean, you don't see those things that could possibly pull that carbon dioxide back in underground and get it out of the atmosphere for that regulation process. So that is the carbon cycle. Here's sort of another picture here where it can happen. The human emissions can pipe it back out. Microbial decomposition, the trees and photosynthesis can suck it back in. It can dissolve in the ocean. These are all part of our very important cycles of carbon dioxide. Okay, and so that's it on Venus then. And I just sort of look at it here once again, and we see now just put a big circle around it. Boy, for a variety of reasons, you are hot, and CO2 really is your big player.